guys, I'm Kyle from the drafting room here, where we handle all of the garage designs and home solutions for Obsessed Garage. Today we are in the garage and I'm going to be walking you through another design. This one is going to be a little more general. We're just going to walk through all the different aspects of it, and I'm going to show you, the lighting, the flooring, the lift, cabinets. We've got a little workshop that's off of the garage that'll be pretty cool. We've got pressure washer, compressed air, stuff like that. So it's a very unique garage, but one that's very fitting for Obsessed Garage, because as I'll show you here, as we pan away from this view to the floor plan, this is just a section, but this garage is in the shape of a hex. Perfect. It's like a match made in heaven for us here at OG. And actually this whole house is a series of hexes. Now this isn't some weird super fan that built a house out of hexes. It used to be a different type of building. He ended up buying it and then found us. So it really is a perfect match for us and him, of course. But yeah, it's like this crazy complex of different hex-shaped rooms and structures that make up this giant house with, a full basement underneath. So we'll talk a little bit about the basement and how that's going to come into play. This is such a weird and unique but cool garage that I felt it would be a cool thing for us to walk through together and just look at all the different aspects of it, and hopefully, just like with the rest of our design walkthroughs that we do for the YouTube channel, hopefully you'll be able to pull something from this that'll help you with your own design that you're working on, or help answer some questions for you on something that maybe we're working on together that maybe you just hadn't gotten the answer that you needed yet. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So this is the plan view of this space, and this is the software that we use from Chief Architect that allows us to build out all of these plans. And this view doesn't really show you a lot in terms of what you can visualize, but we can jump into the camera view. I can click and place a camera wherever my mouse stops. So like where this little camera module is right here, that's where the camera is going to rotate around. So if I want to create a camera that's just going to pivot around the center of the room, I could drop this right here and it's going to be pointed at that wall, and then now I can rotate and that camera is going to swing around that point, and I can rotate around and take a full view of this. So as you can see, it's kind of bare. We haven't gotten into the final aspects of this build in terms of really picking out the exact floor color and maybe any other things that he wants to add onto the walls. It's got a lot of height, so it is a lot of just blank wall space right now. We'll see what he does with the space, or if he's going to add anything else to it. Let's get the first thing out of the way, and that is this giant rectangle that's in the middle of the floor. Now you'll notice that this is diamond plate, which we usually hate, but it was a good material to be able to just put on this to show you what it is really. So Mike's garage is over a basement, and really the whole entire house is over this basement. It's a very short height. It's only like 6 feet. So someone like me, I could walk through no problem unless there's a light or something like that, but most people will have to duck down probably a little bit. I'm sure that'll be the natural reaction regardless of how tall you are, but the basement is the entire house. So like the entire size of the structure is also a basement underneath, which is really cool. He is thinking about maybe long-term parking some cars down there, but it's not a super usable space. So he's only going to be parking things or putting things down there that maybe don't need to be accessed more than like once a month or more. But this right here is actually going to be a lift system. I think he's going to be custom fabricating it with some hydraulics and stuff. But as you drive in to the garage, there's going to be like I don't think he's going to make it a garage door button. That probably wouldn't be safe. But the idea is that you drive onto this, and then you go down into the basement via the stairs, and then you can press the button, and that whole floor will just pivot down and just, like a ramp. And that'll give you access to then drive a vehicle or walk down or whatever it is that you're wanting to do. You can drive on down into the basement. So that was a really unique thing that we had to work around. Some of the things that we had to take into consideration with this are, Swiss tracks. Swiss tracks is 3/4 of an inch high. So if he was just to make that lift platform level with the concrete, well, now when we put Swiss tracks on top, now there's going to be, the Swiss tracks is going to be raised, and then the lift part is going to be recessed down from that. So what he's done is he's created a lip around the edge, and I don't think a part of the ramp itself, but actually coming up from the concrete next to it, that is going to go up 3/4 of an inch. That lift top is going to be dead flat with that, and then that will give basically a recessed bed that we'll be able to install the Swiss tracks in. And that way everything will be exactly level. So the top of the Swiss tracks, the top of that lift, be dead on. I believe the whole thing is going to be just one giant metal plate. So it'll be able to support the car, and the hydraulics underneath, of course, are going to be very beefy. It's going to be a pretty cool system. That's something, of course, that he's coming up with, he's developing for this house. I don't think we really have access at this point to any companies that manufacture something like that. So this is definitely going to be a custom thing that he's doing. So with this, we've got 2 different bays. So this is really going to be a 2-car garage. If for some reason, an emergency, you needed to fit 3 cars in here, I think you could. I think there's enough room to where you could slide one over here next to the cabinets, another one in the middle, and then kind of park one over towards the door. Obviously, because it's a hexagon shape, it's a little funky in that we've got this wall over here that's at an angle, and then we've got this other wall that's also angled. And because of the way that the foundation for the basement is going to be, and where the entry level is for the garages, he's actually having to build a ramp. I don't know if this is going to be concrete or wood or what material he's going to make that out of specifically. But this was the design that he and the builders had come up with, is he was going to do this kind of trapezoidal platform for the door. So that'll be interesting. It'll allow furniture access pretty easy, wheelchair access, stuff like that will definitely be doable. I'm not sure if he's planning on putting a railing up here. It's only going to be about 2 feet high, 2.5 feet, something like that. So it's not going to be too terribly tall, but probably a railing might make sense. One of the things that we talked about with this was the compressed air, and really trying to figure out where the best place to put it was going to be, so that he didn't have necessarily reels all over the place, but had air where he needed it to be able to access inside, outside, etc. Both sides of the cars, that sort of thing. So even though this is a lift, this will be a normal parking space most of the time for like a daily vehicle or whatever. He is working with the concrete people to figure out if we can do a recessed scissor lift here as well. I believe we're going to be able to, so that'll be cool. But we wanted to be able to access air on either side of this space. And when we were trying to plan that out, what we're doing is we're having a small compressor just sit in the cabinet over here, the 965 millimeter MSS Plus cabinet. So that can go in the top, or it can go in the bottom. And then what you can do is just run a hose behind the cabinet array and have like a manifold or something like that up here. Or we can modify it and actually cut into the top of the cabinet and put a manifold down in the cabinet if you wanted to. You could actually install the piping into the cabinet. That's undecided still of which direction we're going to go with this. I kind of like the idea of having the manifold in the cabinet, and then you can open it up and plug something in if you wanted to without having to use the hose reel. We put the reel here so it could access the right side of the vehicles and then also be pulled out into the driveway. So we did air and power, and then over here was where we really wanted to do air initially. So that way it could access this side of the vehicle and be able to be pulled out if needed as well. There wasn't really a good feasible way to get the air lines over to this wall without having to go, across the ceiling and span this gap. And we weren't sure what the spacing was going to be available yet, with the high lift garage doors, and if it was even going to be possible to have an air line up here. So what we did was we just decided to not do that and put a power cord reel over on that side. And then we just went up to the ceiling, went straight across, and then down for an air reel over here above the lift controls. And then over in before we get into the workshop, fortunately this does give us access for air on both sides of the vehicles. It's 50-foot hose, so this one can still be pulled, out into the driveway if needed, if for some reason that one's tied up with something else. So I think it's a pretty good coverage solution. We'd put this one over here for now for the power. It could go next to this one as well, just to keep everything nice and tidy and together. I always like having the hose reels next to each other. That if you're going to do air, well, you might as well put a power reel there as well, because you're already taking up that spot with a hose reel. It makes a lot of sense to me. But let me show you the other room. So you'll notice the steps. The steps go up, and then on the other side, there's a door back here. On the other side of this is the workshop. So let me go into that camera view. So this is the workshop, and actually right here is a T. So we're going to send Prevost through the wall right here. And that comes out right here in this spot. And this is inside the workshop. So that T is going to provide air access on either side of this cabinet array. This is going to be where he's doing woodworking, welding, fabrication, and stuff like that. Mostly wood, though, I think is what Mike was saying. And he wanted to be able to have good air access in here, have it flanking the cabinet array, which makes a lot of sense. So this is going to be the main setup here in the workshop. Air and power on both sides, so very, very accessible and obviously very useful. As you can see, we've got all the Prevost exactly dialed in with all the pieces and parts that it needs to be. Oops, sorry for the camera there. So we've got that T like I was talking about there, valves and so on and so forth to get everything set up here. Let's talk just briefly here about this workshop, because there's not too much to see other than it helping to complete the hex, which is pretty cool. Go back to the plan file or the plan view here so I can show you. So this is the workshop area over here. You can see we have all the Prevost pipe detailed out of exactly where it needs to go, what pieces and parts we're going to have for that. Here's the cabinet array in the workshop with the flanking air and power for the main garage, and then air over the lift controller, and then power over in the front. And we've also detailed out the electrical outlets for that in these shapes right here, the circle on 2 lines. let's talk next about flooring. So I mentioned how with that lift that goes down into the basement, flooring was a pretty big consideration, and something that we really had to think about with, all right, how is he going to do this and not have two different levels with the lift and all of that. So we have that lip that goes along for the concrete and where the lift is that goes down. It's probably not going to be our normal design where we do like a border and stuff. We could maybe do a strip over here next to the cabinets, but because of the big lift in the middle and because of the hexagon shape, honestly, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to do a border in here because it's going to be cut off, it'll be weird angles. It's just not something that we wanted to do. So if Mike does come back and say, hey, well, let's try and do something in there, what I think I would suggest would be to not detail out the parking spaces, but maybe just pretend like the lift is not there, and we'll do a singular border all the way across here. Maybe I can show you from the top-down view a little better. Do like a border strip that goes like this all the way over. Obviously, what would be here is going to be the lift, so it would just break. It would just stop there and then start back up here. And then maybe another strip that goes down like this for continuing the border. And then another one that goes across this way. Obviously, again here, between where the lift ends and stops, there would be nothing. And then that border would pick up again. And then we could close it off with, the left side of the border as well. So it would kind of create two C's, if you will, that would encapsulate the lift, if you can picture that. That might be a solution, that we could do something like that. If you did want to include some details, so that way it's not just gray and gray and gray and black ceiling. So we'll probably entertain that and see if that's something that he wants to do. In the workshop, though, it's not going to be really something we can do in there in terms of doing a design because of the angled wall. You can't really do an angled border with Swiss tracks because it's a square, and then you'd just be doing diamond to diagonal, diamond, diamond, diamond. So it doesn't really make sense. And that would be a 45-degree angle, and we're not working with 45-degree angles. What is a hexagon, like 20 degrees or something like that? So, that's pretty difficult to do, and it's not really feasible with Swiss tracks. One of the questions that we get a lot, and you've heard me talk about this a lot, and probably heard Matt talk about this a lot, when it comes to Swiss tracks and dealing with debris management. This side of his space, the workshop, is really going to be for woodworking. Your immediate reaction is probably like, oh, that's going to be horrible with Swiss tracks. Well, it's actually not, because what it's going to do, think of a concrete floor and you're working with a bunch of sawdust and whatever. It's going to all pile on the floor. You're going to be walking through it, and you're just going to kick it everywhere, and it's going to go everywhere. With Swiss tracks, it's going to act like a filter in a way. Fortunately, in this space, because he's going to be dealing with mostly like wood shavings and sawdust and stuff like that, he is going to have, I believe, a vacuum system, like a dust collection system. But having the Swiss tracks will be able to collect any of the other debris and shavings and sawdust that's going to fall down. And then he'll easily be able to just go over and vacuum when he needs to, and it'll just suck it right up. Sawdust is super lightweight, so it's going to come back up through the cracks of the Swiss tracks when you vacuum, super easy. So maintaining that is not going to be a problem at all. So think about that if you're going to be doing a workshop, or you're having some hesitations with dirt and debris or sawdust even in that environment. It's actually going to work out pretty good. We've talked a lot about different pressure washer setups and where we place them and where we put them. Mike said he's got plumbing on this back wall, so it was going to be a pretty easy spot to be able to put it, as opposed to the left or right or wherever. But I prefer this spot on the back wall, because if you're washing out in the driveway, having it on the back wall means that you're going to be able to pull that hose right off the hose reel right out to where you're washing, with no having to make a turn or anything like that. So it's actually ideal. And since we have 100 feet of hose, you're going to have plenty left over. It's not like you're going to be using that entire thing anyway. Another spot we could have done it would have been over here on this left side angled wall. It may have inhibited ramp access to be able to enter the house. And I don't think he was planning on putting any plumbing there, so that was why that was out. But it is also kind of angled away, so it would have made pulling the hose off the reel out into the drive a little bit more difficult because of that angle. So always try and put it on a back wall if you can, or a 90-degree left or right wall is usually a good spot too. Lift controls over here on that side is pretty self-explanatory. We've got this nice little cubby right here that didn't really work for like a cabinet or anything like that, but for the lift controls, I think it's going to work great. He's going to be able to reinforce this with a lot of steel and such around and underneath the concrete. So we should be good to go on doing a recessed Jumbo 7. So remember, like the Jumbo 7 requires a certain depth for a recess. Well, if you're going to have Swiss tracks on top of the concrete, that means that the top of the lift is going to be here, but then your Swiss tracks is going to be higher. So really, you want your pit to be shallower so that now your lift and your Swiss tracks are even. So your lift is actually going to stick up out of that recess by about 3/4 of an inch. So that way, when you put your Swiss tracks down, now it's a nice level surface, just like with the other main lift that goes down into the basement, what we were taking into consideration there. So same thing for a normal recess lift like we did here for the Jumbo 7 in Matt's garage. It's actually 3/4 of an inch shallower than what you would normally spec out. So we have our own new modified plans based on the lifts that we've done and the ones that we've installed. So if you need that, reach out to us. Don't use the new spawn plans. The ones that we have now are more accurate and work better for what we've found when installing with Swiss tracks and then the conduit runs and stuff like that. So definitely reach out if you need those, or if we're doing a design together, we'll provide those for you. Moving on to the cabinets, we didn't need to go crazy. In Mike's garage, he wanted to have a rolling cabinet. I just, I keep talking about this. I like speccing out the rolling cabinets for most MSS Plus arrays because they're every bit as good as a normal cabinet. They have the same exact capacity as like the 890 8 drawer. You just lose out on one of the deeper drawers on the bottom, but then it docks so perfectly into that cabinet array that it's such a good solution. And then you can fit most of your tools in there and then be able to pull it out and go work on your project or have a nice seating area there if you want. So, I mean, with this extra space, I could see, Mike a lot of times probably just pulling this cabinet out, leaving it over on this back wall, and then just having a nice little seating and work area right there would be pretty cool. So we did a 898 drawer on the side, 1540, which we love those, and then a 965 millimeter locker on the left. We left this space open because it fit pretty well with having these hose reels, and it's kind of a dedicated space for that. If maybe he wants to have like an oil reservoir for doing oil changes and stuff like that, maybe that makes sense to keep that there or something like that. In the workshop, we wanted to go with a similar setup, so he's still going to have a lot of tools, maybe not so much sonic tools in the workshop because he's going to be doing a lot of woodworking, but he is going to have a lot of saws and chisels and smaller things like that make a lot of sense to be able to put into a rolling cabinet. And this is going to be a very modular space. So we have just that one cabinet array on the wall, and then the rest of this triangle is going to be filled up with rolling benches for drill presses and table saws and band saws and stuff like that. So it's going to be a very modular space so that he can leave this center area open at pretty much all times, have the other tools lined up over here and then over on this other wall as well, and really be able to move things around and have a lot of different work areas and surfaces. So we wanted to be able to have a nice seating area in here if he's doing some detail work or whatever. So we did another rolling cabinet in here as well. That's going to be the main tool storage with another 896 drawer. In here we've got the 720 waste bin. That makes a lot of sense in this area because he's going to be doing a lot of work in here. 3 drawer, of course, we like that because it can hold a lot of larger items, routers and power tools and stuff like that will go good in there. We didn't do any wall cabinets on this space because he's going to be doing pretty much this entire wall with like slat wall and pegboard. This is going to be a very like hidden space, so he's not trying to make it super pretty with everything tucked away. He's trying to make it extremely usable. So being able to just reach and grab a tool right where you know that it's going to be, saw or something like that, ruler, level, is going to be very easy and very useful for him. We're doing Cree LS fixtures throughout. I think we're doing just regular switches. We're not doing any crazy radio raw 2 select or anything like that. So we're just doing some typical Lutron Vive POW packs and regular Picos, and this will remain for the most part pretty separate from the rest of the house. Doesn't need to worry about zone, so a lot of zone control and app control and stuff like that. So versus some of the other garages we've done, like Fred's car barn, that is a very intricate lighting design with multiple zones and 2 totally separate systems, and this one's much simpler. It's still a really high-end setup with these Cree LS fixtures, but it's going to be a lot easier to manage with just the Vive POW packs and some simple Picos, while still providing a really high quality lighting scheme and just light output by itself. So with this one, because we weren't super concerned with zone control, from a left and right garage standpoint, we did it perpendicular to the entry point, as you pull into the garage, so parallel to the garage doors, and that'll work the best, I think, for lighting this whole space because of the odd shape. So we can go back to the layout here, and you can see how we did 3 LS8s, 3 LS8s and an LS4, and then 3 LS4s, or 4 LS8s, in that back section. So it worked out pretty well to really fill in that space as much as we can. We've notated the POW packs here on the edge, so this POW pack will handle all of these lights, this POW pack will handle all of these, and those will be on 2 wireless dimmer switches, the Picos from Lutron. In the workshop, we just did 1 zone. That's all that's needed. It's a pretty small space, so there's not really any need to have multiple zones in there. We've got a Pico on this door, a Pico on this door. So that's pretty self-explanatory, so that'll be pretty simple. So as we close this out, let me walk you through the design proposal that we did for Mike. This is the page that we put all of the client information on. So if we were sending a document to you, it would have your name and address and phone number and email address and stuff like that. You can print this out and share it with whoever you would need to, whether that's your contractor or your interior designer or friend or buddy or whatever. You'll be able to print this out and share it with whoever you want. The way the flow goes is we have the cover page, we've got the inside cover page, which shows the information, and then we have a plan view to show the floor plan. We're not getting into specifics on outlet locations and stuff like this for a design proposal. That's the technical drawings. And then we go into just some nice interior views to really let you visualize the space. We don't really have a way for you to walk through the garage yet in a 3D sense. We are working on some new software, so be on the lookout for that eventually, to where I think we'll be able to provide clients with basically a little, website accessed render that you can go walk through like a video game pretty much. So that's going to be really cool. We're working on that, so hopefully we'll be able to show that on a video soon. Mike's Garage, we've got just a few different views in here showing the space from different angles and giving an idea of, the workshop and the garage. And then we go into the specifics on the cabinet arrays, each individual item. We don't go into all of the power strips and posts and back panels and stuff like that, but just the main components, the main cabinets that you're seeing for this setup. We've got the lighting in here, of course. We have the Swiss tracks, which we did the pearl gray throughout. Again, we may change that and do a little bit of a design in there if it makes sense. We've got the pressure washer wall with the shelving and the bucket filler, and of course the Krenzla setup. We've detailed out some of the Prevost runs for the compressed air, and then also the recessed lift, the Jumbo 7, and then the final page. So that's pretty much everything that I wanted to show you about Mike's Garage. Again, it's not like this earth-shattering, like, oh my gosh, look at this, insane thing we did with his cabinets, or this is the best lighting scheme that you've ever seen. But hopefully, again, designs like this let you think about the way that you're going to set up your space in a different way and see it in a different light. Or maybe you're going to, catch one little thing out of this video that really makes sense. So whether it's the compressed air or Swiss tracks, and having to make sure that you're meeting up with other floors, hopefully there's stuff that you've been able to pull out of this video or the other videos that we're doing in this style and this format that are going to be able to help you with your design and your garage. If you want to work with us on your garage, reach out, design@obsessedgarage.com, and we can give you the information on how to start that process, or go to the garage design page on obsessedgarage.com. You can read through what to expect with all that information that's there. At the bottom, there's a design deposit that you can pay and then get into the next steps. That deposit currently, that just goes towards whatever you purchase for the garage, when we've worked out the design for you. So be sure to check that out, and we will see you for the next set of videos that hopefully will be coming really soon.